welcome back. This is episode 10 of Talking Ted, where we talk about our favorite TV show, Ted Lasso. I'm Tori, that's Danny, and we are just going to dive right on in because there's a lot to talk about. This was another lengthy episode.
Yes.
I think the runtime was, an hour and 3 minutes?
Something like that, yeah.
Hour and 3. Yeah, another very long episode, another episode that was just packed with perfect little bow ties on the end of storylines and just wonderful things that we can't wait to talk about. So, Danny, why don't you start us off with maybe the beginning of the episode, or the part of the episode that you liked the most?
Ooh.
Dealer's choice.
Well, I'll say first of all, it didn't feel like an hour and 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it just flew by, which is unfortunate because I wanted it to go on longer and longer. But the part that had me laughing the most, probably, and this is the episode is called International Break, and for a reason. So some of the players from the team go out and play for their national team football teams. So we had Van Damme went to Canada. We had Colin went to Wales.
Colin went to Wales. Bumbercatch
went to Switzerland.
I didn't know he was Swiss, which Ted makes that remark himself. You're Swiss, and he looks at me like, "Yeah, coach," and he's like, me. "Makes sense, checks out."
Yeah. And Jamie Tartt plays for England.
And then, of course, the biggest one of Van Damme, Canada.
Yes, and of course, Danny Rojas goes to Team Mexico.
Yes.
And so during this international week, Canada happened to be playing against Mexico. So now Van Damme and Danny, who were teammates before, are now, as Danny puts it, enemies. And when Van Damme went to go congratulate Danny on joining the team, I had just taken a drink of water right before that scene came on. And then Danny turns around and he gives him the stare down and he says, "You are not my friend. You're now my enemy." I almost choked on my drink. It was so funny. It was hilarious. And go ahead.
You literally texted me.
Yeah.
You literally texted me after watching that scene and you explained that. I was like, honestly, same. I don't think anyone was expecting it, which is what made it so much more funny.
Yeah. And they continued that progression. We see them next on the airplane where Van Damme comes in and he sees Danny sitting like across the aisle from him, and he tells the person next to him, "That's my teammate." And like he offers him some chips. Danny, like a little kid telling "Daddy, you want some chips? You want some chips?" And Danny grabs the bag of Doritos and smashes it to a pulp and then pours it into his hands. It was just perfect.
That was so good. I mean, they both really showed, I think, great acting skills this week. Danny, of course, Christo showing his range there. Mm-hmm. But I saw someone on Twitter had posted, remember whenever it was Led Tasso, right? Like Led Tasso came out. What did they say? They said Ranny Dohas or something like that. We got to meet Ranny Dohas this week, and it was perfect. He was even like wearing the aviators and everything, and the leather jacket. I just thought it was so good. And then, of course, even going past that, when they actually do play each other, right? He goes straight for Van Damme. You see him just take an absolute strike, right
to his nose.
Took the ball to his face. Gets a broken nose.
It's like he wasn't even trying to score. He just wanted to kick him in the face.
And then, of course, at the end, they're back in the locker room and they're all on the same team. And Danny goes up to him like nothing ever happened, like he just. And then Van Damme's like, don't come near me, bro. but Danny, of course, that just shows the competitor in him. Like
that's true, right there.
Really wants to win, and it just shows. He's definitely a dude you want to have on your team and not someone against you. But it was just so unexpected, which is why it was so perfect. And then,
absolutely.
Of course, not just that. I mean, that part was great. But going back to the team selection, right? I think the biggest, most important storyline here when it came to the players was that one player didn't make a national team.
Exactly.
And that was Sam Obasanya. And everyone, I mean, the show opens, right? I love the little talk show that they have. Everyone's talking about how great the team's doing, how Sam has just been a superstar. You know, him and Jamie really topping out the last couple of games and helping them score. And so everyone's really surprised that he didn't make the team.
Right.
And so we're all kind of wondering why, right? Well, all the teams, they go along their way, and Sam ends up at his restaurant. And I'll let you talk about Edward Akufu.
And then Edwin, right. Before we get to that part real quick, just right after we learned that Sam wasn't selected for the Nigerian national team, Jamie Tart approaches him.
Yes.
And he says, "Hey, 24, I'm sorry about what happened, whatnot. Are you okay?" And I thought that was really not clever, but really special that they had Jamie do that. Because, you know, if you remember back to season 2, where Sam was really mad that Jamie had come back onto the team because of how Jamie had treated him before. So it really shows that their relationship is to that point, and it's increased so much that, you know, it's Jamie approaching him, not Isaac, the captain, not Ted, not anyone else. It's Jamie who takes that initiative to go approach him and check in with him right off the bat.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did forget to say that. I mean, obviously the whole team and Ted and them were surprised that Sam didn't make it on the team, you know, and Ted eventually tells Sam, "Hey, be a goldfish, man." Like, you know, Michael Jordan didn't make his varsity team his sophomore year either. We kind of go into that joke there. Sam, of course, knew the story, but I think it was special in that moment too, that immediately afterwards Jamie went up and was the one to kind of reconcile him. I mean, it just shows his growth over the past couple of seasons and his maturity, and their friendship.
Exactly.
So, great catch. I totally forgot about that part, but you're right. So then after that, it kind of fast forward
a bit. Right. And we see Sam take a small little breath, put on a happy face to go into his restaurant, because it's a different part of him. So he has to, like, you know, not let what's affecting him or what happened on the field or around the football, you know, selection not affect his business, because it is a separate part of him. So he takes that moment to collect himself and puts on a smile and goes in, and he sees that the restaurant is completely empty, except for, as you mentioned, Edwin is in there with his
Francis, his handshaker.
Yeah, his handshaker. Yeah, his I don't want to say his manservant, but his right hand man, his handshaker, Francis. So, and also the food blogger. So there's a bit of an exchange there, and we learn from that conversation why Sam wasn't selected to Nigerian, and it had a $20 million price tag attached to it. So, I mean, I guess in one way it kind of makes you upset. I guess it would really upset you, but to learn that I'm worth $20 million not to play, it could get a little bit flattering if you want to look at it that way. Of course, he didn't.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Edwin Okufu is just one of those characters played wonderfully by the actor who you love to hate, right? Because you're just like, he's there and he's just like gets on underneath your skin, underneath your nails, and it's like, oh, he's like the epitome of an entitled rich kid in a way. Yes, he has all his money now that was left to him by his father who passed away, and you just want to wring his neck. But he does it in a humorous way, of course, and the actor plays him perfectly.
Man, and when he went through the different accents, because we find out, right? You know, Sam was expecting Sam and Simi. So Simi's back. We were expecting him to have a full restaurant, and they walk in, and he's like, "What's going on? Why is it empty?" And Edwin's up here like, "Oh, sorry to hear the restaurant's not doing well." And he's like, "No, we were fully booked." He goes, "Yeah, I booked all the tables." Goes through a series of accents, pretending to be all these people booking reservations. I mean, props to that actor, man. That was pretty good. And then we also find out, right, not only did Edwin, you know, pay to have Sam blocked from the national team that he was asked to be on, but he's also opening up a West African restaurant right down the street.
20 meters away, yep.
And so not only is he, you know, slight Sam in that way, but now he's coming after his restaurant. That's vile. And the food blogger, of course says, hey, me and Edwin found some glass in our food. I'm assuming this meal is going to be on the house, right? Like threatening.
Right.
So you can very clearly tell, like, Edwin has got people in his pocket, man, and he is out to get Sam. So it's very dangerous territory for Sam. You're a little worried, like, who can't be swayed by Edwin at this point? Who can't buy out?
Right? Exactly. Yep. And shout out to the actor's name, Sam Richardson. So Sam, great job. And we also learn, of course, throughout the episode that Edwin is trying to start up a super league, which Ted thinks is like the Justice League, and they make a little joke on that.
I love that exchange between him and Trent.
Yeah, it's just like, no, Ted, you're thinking of the Justice League. Oh, you're right.
But I love it because, like, Trent is like one of the boys now, not just one of the boys, but kind of one of the gals too, because him and Rebecca were having some girl talk, and she's like, Ted, you're not very good at girl talk. And then the camera pans over and Trent is there. And of course they're talking about West Ham, and he's like, oh, well, I heard some rumblings about some inappropriate workplace behavior. And she's like, see, that's girl talk. So I love that they've totally embraced Trent. Like, I love that.
Yeah, and it's really cool because at the beginning of the season, we remember that Rebecca didn't want Trent there. Yeah. They didn't want him to write the book, but now, like you said, they've embraced him and he is part of the team now, I think. So that is really cool, and I'm glad that's happened. But you mentioned West Ham. So that was a huge storyline, a huge game changer, because Coach Shelley is no longer there.
Yeah. That, I will be honest with you, I was not expecting that to happen. I mean, eventually I was expecting that to happen, but not in this way. It was so sudden. I mean, again, at the beginning of the show, it was the television announcers who mentioned it. And they're all trying to figure out what happened. And then, of course, the old coach of Richmond, or the old manager, is like, no, well, he didn't matter anyways. He was just the kit man. The real brains behind the operation is Rupert. And their two anchors just kind of look at him like, what are you talking about, man? It was totally Nate.
He's trying to get his job back.
Yeah. So we don't know what happened right at that point. We're just wondering, but we do eventually find out. You're thinking, did Rupert fire him? What happened? We find out Nate actually quit. He was the one who quit, because I thought it was going to be Rupert that fired him or something like that. So I thought that was really interesting. And we have this sweet scene between him and Jade. Yeah. And for anyone, again, who thought maybe she was a gold digger, right? She's still with him here. And she comforts him and asks him to go to Poland with her, to meet the family and hang out. This really funny joke about screwing in light bulbs. And he was like, that's hilarious. And she's like, why is it funny? Like, I lost it there, bro. But, he's in his house. He's sulking. He's obviously upset. And she's there for him in that moment of vulnerability. And I just thought that was really sweet. Of course, we see her leave. Oh, sorry. Did I go away for just a second?
You're there.
Sorry. We see her walk out the door. She's going on vacation for a couple of days back to Poland to see her family. And the paparazzi is all outside of Nate's house. Just waiting to get a picture, of course, waiting to get his statement. So, she's very clearly equipped to handle whatever baggage Nate comes with. She walks through the paparazzi like it's nothing. But he doesn't want to leave quite yet. He's still a little hurt, but I think it's very interesting. You look at, he could have easily told everybody about Rupert. He could have come out and threw Rupert under the bus and talked to him about, his infidelity with his wife and inappropriate workplace behavior with the assistant and everything else. Obviously, very inappropriate behavior from Rupert. But, Nate kind of takes the high road and prefers to just not say a statement at all.
Yeah. And I was going to mention that, and the fact that he just resigned or quit and then, shrunk away from the spotlight, I thought was quite interesting, because here's someone who's feasted on being at the center of West Ham and always wanting to be recognized. And now that he sees the evil truth, so to speak, of what Rupert is all about, he decided to, you know what, I'm just going to remove myself from that and just cut off all ties to it. And I thought that was interesting because, like you said, he could have went public with all of it. He could have become, you know, not the whistleblower, but just like shown the light on everything that's hiding behind the curtains.
Yeah.
But he didn't. Maybe he will soon. I don't know.
Right.
And I guess it's more of like, okay, I want to, maybe it's a self-preservation thing that he wants to still be employable. So if, as a coach, if you go and, you know, you burn that bridge completely, you might just get blacklisted from all the other teams. No one's going to want to pick you up because no one says, that guy, if we do anything wrong, he's just going to rat us out. So
yeah,
self-preservation, maybe he says, I got to think of myself for the future. I still want to coach, just not at this place for this owner.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great perspective. I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking like he just didn't want to really say anything, but that's true. I don't know if he's going to want to coach again though. Right. So this is going to be something that we're going to have to wait and see. I think he does want to coach. I think you probably believe he wants to coach again. It's sort of in his blood, right? But right now I think he just needs a moment. And, you know, I think I couldn't remember if it was before this or after this. Ted and Beard are in the office, and so is Roy. And Beard's like, "Hey guys, you want to go hang out later tonight? Me and Jane are going to an axe throwing place." Then, you know, we've got those here in the States too. They're really fun. They're like, "Yeah, we printed off targets ourselves." And he's like, "We're celebrating." And Ted's like, "What are you celebrating?" And he was like, "Nate getting fired," basically what came, you know, and they have targets of printed out and they're going to throw axe at Nate's face and blah, 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 whatever. And of course, Ted's like, "Isn't it bad karma to celebrate someone else's bad
karma?"
And so he decides to skip out. And, you know, Roy clearly just isn't interested in hanging out outside of work. So he's like, "Nah, I got a thing." But Beard, his girlfriend, and we have this funny little exchange. Like Beard has 17 axes that he just carries with him, like at all times. But when that was all going down, Ted was looking at his phone, reading the article about Nate.
Yeah.
And you can sort of see his face, his eyes. The wheels are definitely turning. So this, again, this is Nate's redemption arc, right?
Definitely.
How is Ted going to get Nate back to AFC Richmond? He's already thinking about it. Or maybe not back to AFC Richmond, but he's definitely thinking about reaching out.
Yes. And I was waiting for that to happen. I guess me wanting it to happen in this episode was too much, I guess. But I was waiting, when is he going to reach out? Because you know he's going to. He can't just leave that stone unturned. He has to do it. And I want him to. I'm waiting for that moment because I want to see that reconciliation. I want to see them, you know, end as they began. You know, maybe Ted gives him a ride home in his small little car or in a small little car or something like that. It's
well, and you know why I think we didn't get that?
Sorry.
No, you're good. I wanted that too, but I don't think we're going to get that until the last episode or maybe the next. Not really sure if it's going to be the last one or the next one, but either way, something else had to happen first before Nate and Ted can reconcile. And that, we're sort of fast forwarding a lot here, was that Nate and his own dad had to reconcile.
Yes,
right?
That was
you know, Nate sneaks out of his house. The Paps are gone. He sees an opportunity to get out and he sneaks into his own parents' house. They moved the burglar was coming in the house, you know, and his mom is there for him and his dad's there for him. And the mom's really supporting him. You know, Nate really doesn't want to leave his room. So we go through this whole montage. Pass by and he just hasn't left the room. He's just sort of getting food and then eating it and then leaving.
Yeah.
So eventually he gets confronted by his dad and they have this very important conversation, which should have happened years ago, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, wait, you know what? Nate plays the violin first, doesn't he?
Well, yes. And that's what leads to that conversation.
or do we just dive into it since we're already in it?
We're in it. Let's dive into it. So,
right.
so Nate, parents leave the house. He realizes he's going to be alone for a few hours, so he goes exploring. He's viewing old photo albums of him as a kid. We see him, remembering those moments. We see it in his face, that he can remember some of the details. He tears up a little bit, and then he finally ends up in the attic where he finds his old violin, and he goes back to his room and he just starts playing. And it was such a beautiful song. Of course, the song is the musical accompaniment to another montage that happens at the Super League luncheon and other stuff. But
which was beautifully edited and so creatively produced, by the way. We'll talk about that in a so sorry, continue.
Oh, I just wanted to add that Nick Mohammed, the actor who plays Nate, tweeted out that was his wife who was playing the piano accompaniment with him on that. And that was his old violin from his childhood that he used to play. So I thought that
playing it,
yes. So I thought that added so much more to it. And it was such a beautiful moment and touching moment to begin with. But to realize that was his wife accompanying him and it was his old violin, it felt so much more grounded and so much more personal to him. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I love that too. I saw that as well. And just perfectly brought together scene. So continue.
So then, of course, we see him abruptly stop when he realizes his dad is watching him. And they proceed to have that conversation that you mentioned that should have happened years ago about that his dad didn't know how to parent a genius. He just wanted the best for him. And I thought one of my favorite lines that his dad tells him is successful or not successful. I just want you to be happy.
Yes. Because his issue was that he felt like he always had to perform for his dad, right?
Exactly.
The top grades, the top whatever. That was what he thought. Like, I think, I can understand that being from a Mexican mom, like we don't really talk in my family. We didn't talk about therapy or feelings or any of that stuff. It was, all right, you didn't get straight A's, like you're grounded or whatever.
Yeah.
They always just expected so much. And that's just a lot to put on someone's shoulders that young. And Nate has felt like he's been carrying this by himself, having these expectations from his dad. But like you said, his dad said he was a genius. And Nate never knew that. Like, if he would have just been told that so much more early on, I think him and his dad would have had a much better relationship. Like, Nate just never felt like enough, but his dad thought that he was the smartest person in the world.
Right. Yep. Communication.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah, but I mean, it turns into such a sweet moment of realization and just heart on your sleeve, and they both are crying, and it's just a moment that was years in the making and has been very painful getting to here.
Right.
And so to just finally have that emotional release and understanding from both of them, like, hey, like, I'm your dad, like, hey, I'm your son. We just want the best for each other. And guys, I said, I'm sorry that I wasn't better. And if you remember, last season, when Nate was taking out his anger on Ted, telling him to go back to Kansas, storms off, tells him these horrible, terrible things. We very clearly thought that stuff wasn't really meant for Ted.
Right.
Ted was just sort of the person who was most convenient to unload that stuff on. And the easiest target because he wasn't going to fight back.
Right.
But Nate really truly meant to say all that stuff to his real dad.
Right.
So, now that he has this closure, I think we're definitely going to see this full circle moment, this redemption moment that will ultimately culminate between Ted and Nate. And we saw a little glimpse of that, right?
Yes.
Yep. To the locker room, and we see all the towels are folded, and the kit man Will walks in, and he's so confused because everything's all done. It was sort of a callback to season 2, I believe, when Nate got the promotion.
Yeah.
Thing was done, and you sort of thought like, oh, whoa, is Will getting promoted? Like, what's happening here? But what happened was Nate snuck in, cleaned everything, left Will a note with a piece of lavender. and said, hey, I'm sorry.
Right. And
So,
that is the redemption beginning of it, because last season he was terrible to Will, the Kit Man. He was completely awful to him. So he realized he's starting to make his amends, and where he's building his way up. So yeah.
Yes. So he's on his way, y'all. He will come back. Don't worry. But there's a little more that needs to be done, right? And I think it will only end with Ted and Nate. That's where it's been leading this whole time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of closes out that chapter. We'll have to see that final redemption and apology and reconnection maybe in the next episode. But another big thing, Edwin Akufu's meeting.
Yes.
Super League, right?
The Super League luncheon.
Yes. So, rewind a little bit. Rebecca had been invited by Rupert to go to this Super League. It's all the richest people, owners of the teams. And Edwin is just trying to get all these teams together, charge a ridiculous amount of money for tickets, basically to where it's unaffordable for the average human being, just would not afford it. But they would basically, what was it, like extend their money tenfold? Yeah. They were going to make a lot of money from this.
They were, yes.
And Rebecca didn't even want to go to the meeting. She kind of felt like she was a token, right? Rupert invited her for some sick, twisted reason, or maybe just because they would look good with a woman. So it's not just a bunch of old, wrinkly white men.
Exactly.
And Rebecca makes this funny joke about Rupert sneaking in to the Richmond's Green, and she goes, "Do you remember that?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, back when they played by candlelight, old person." So anyways, she doesn't want to go, right? She has this really big talk with Higgins, which I love where their friendship has developed now. I mean, she's just so honest with him.
Yeah. And well, I thought it was funny too, because he's like, Keely's, you didn't talk to Keely, you didn't talk to Ted, you didn't talk to Sassy. What about your mom? And then you realize, okay, I'm the last on the totem pole here. So
yeah, but then he's like, let's freaking do this.
Yeah.
So we've seen them grow a lot during the seasons. And I love their little Willy Wonka jokes that they had in there.
Oh,
but he
yeah.
tells her to go. He says, you know what, Rebecca, you have a seat at the table. You can make an impact here. Who cares what the intention is behind the invitation? Go to the table, use your voice.
Exactly.
And so, eventually she goes to this meeting. Of course, it is a bunch of old, wrinkly white men, including Rupert, and Edwin walks in, comes straight up to her like, hey, thanks for coming. It's nice to not be the only minority here.
Yes.
Talking about him being Black and her being a woman. They're the only two people that look different from everybody else. And he sits them down, explains how much money they're going to make. They're all listening. He feeds them food. They kick out the Russian coach.
He was like, yeah, I get it.
I that was just so perfect. But they get to the end of the dinner and Edwin's like, what's your answer? And they're all for it. They're like, heck yeah, let's make it. And we sort of get like wow, these people are really just greedy. Yeah. This moment where, the violin and piano accompaniment from Nate comes in. And it's Rebecca talking. And she has this really gorgeous, just incredible speech talking about, we're not supposed to be doing this stuff for greed. We're supposed to be, soccer and football, it's for the people.
Right.
It's for the people. And she brings up that story that her and Rupert talked about how he was too poor to pay for tickets to Richmond's games.
So he sneak in.
He eventually got caught by a security guard and kicked out, whatever, kicked him in the nuts and ran away. But she just has this glorious speech about football and what it means to people and what it means to the world. And like, how dare they even think about taking that away? And props to whoever wrote that. I'm pretty sure it was Jason and them. I know they wrote these last 3 episodes, but just the words moving.
Yeah.
Kind of see at the end of it, everyone's quiet, and Edwin goes, "All right, who wants to make some money?" Each, but who wants to make money?
Right. And I thought it was really cool that they brought in again that the fact that she mentions that we might own the teams, but they don't belong to us.
Yes.
They belong to the people that watch, that pour in their time, their blood, their money to go support them. That's who it belongs to.
Yes.
And I thought that was really great, which echoes back to what Ted Lasso said about being the coach there. He's like, and why he invited the fans to come watch practices. So I thought that was really, because the team belongs to them. I thought that was really cool that they, linked those together, and that's the sentiment and how they feel about the team.
Yes.
And then, of course, we see, after all that, we see Edwin walking out, followed by Francis, who's kind of cleaning off his hands.
Because them too.
Yeah. And of course, they cut into the actual conference room table or whatnot, and we see food on everyone and everywhere. So now we know what Francis did and what their decision was. And it's really cool that, well, not cool, but it's funny that Edwin always leaves, or both episodes that he was in, he always leaves in a huff and angry because he couldn't get what he wanted. So
makes him greedy.
But
you're right.
Yeah, so I thought that was hilarious how they ended that. And of course, Rebecca and Rupert have a moment where they're talking, and Rupert tries to kiss her, and she backs away and realizes, you know what, maybe that's why he wanted me here to begin with, because he wanted, me. So
that's a good point too. In that moment, I mean, kudos to the actor there. I mean, it was the first time in these 3 years that I've looked at Rupert and almost liked him. Almost felt bad for him. I mean, what incredible acting skills you have to be the most vile, hated character. But then just for that moment, you kind of like the guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, that's powerful. But then, of course, Rupert leans in for the kiss, and clearly Rebecca dodges him. Like, what are you doing? You got a family and a wife and a kid. Like, what are you? Just remembering, they sort of, it went back to a moment of, this was the man that I fell in love with.
Right, exactly.
But that's not who you are.
Yes.
And that's not who you are anymore. And this is why I left you in the first place, because you took this really great moment and then you still were going to cheat on your, and so, she comes back to reality. You're back to sort of hating Rupert, and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm mad at myself for liking you for a second there. So that was just, I loved that entire exchange, and something that we even forgot to mention before she walked into the meeting, right? Another all back to season 1, where Nate is learning to build confidence. And he goes, how do you do that? How are you so confident? How do you be a boss lady? And he asks Rebecca, and she shows him what you just, I raise my arms and I look at myself in the mirror, and I force myself to be confident. And we see her do that, this beautiful moment where she's looking in the mirror. She's looking at herself. And then it turns into this younger her with the pigtails. That, I always feel like a little girl with pigtails walking into a meeting with these old white men.
Right.
That's what I feel like. And that's what she felt like in the moment. She, of course, builds her confidence up, and her normal reflection comes back, and she's ready to go and get them. And I just thought that was such a cool little, just a moment on the entire series, and her growth as a boss lady and as a person. She still gets nervous. She's so BA, but things still make
right. And the fact that she did that, and I think a lot of so that there was, what am I trying to say? There was a moment when before she looked in the mirror, she paused and she took a breath. So that a lot of sequences are having them take that pause. We see them take that pause, and And I think that's really important because in life, we need to do that before we rush headlong into things. We need to collect ourselves, take our breath, and realize and focus our thoughts and our everything. So I thought that was really cool, and I'm glad that they are showing that.
Yes. Well, not just that too, right? But even a little bit before that, she's going through her purse. She pulled none other than the green matchbook, but she also pulled screamed here. Okay, my Ted Becca self screamed Ted's little matchbox soldier. And we remember he gave this to her in season 1, whenever attacked by the journalist, right? And he gave that to her to protect her and to help her have confidence. And so how perfect and sweet was it to just see her look at that little trinket and like draw confidence from that and see that. And it wasn't just that, you know, they kind of zoom out of the match book goes away and it's this perfect shot of the little soldier right here, and she's looking at it. She gets the strength to text Rupert. I mean, she's had this little toy soldier on her for 3 years. Come on. It's meaning it means something. So that was, even if they don't get together, that was enough for me, you know, like just know how meaningful that little piece was that Ted gave her. She's thinking about him.
And she's remembering, like you said, she's had it with her. That's just, you know, she could have easily left it in her desk, left it in a drawer, forgot about it, cleaned out her purse, left it somewhere, but she's purposely kept it with her this whole time.
Yes, she carries it with her. I thought it was so sweet. But anyways, okay, 2 more storylines that we got to get through here real quick. Number 1, Keely and her PR. And number 2, Roy and sort of his meeting with Jamie and his birthday.
Let's talk about Roy real quick with that the Uncle's Day, which I thought was really fun because I'm an uncle and I would like them to celebrate me like that. Why not? We don't get that. But I thought that was really cool that Phoebe, his niece, really wanted to celebrate him because of all that she has done for her and how meaningful he is in her life. So I thought that was really special. The fact that she made him a present with red, orange, and yellow tie-dye colors to spell Roy. I thought that was really cool.
Work the next day.
Yes.
You know, gosh, everyone notices, what is he wearing? We have a laughing character from the front office who I absolutely yes. And then Trent and Beard and Ted, they all see him and everyone's just like, oh my gosh, drops the shirt, drives away, comes back. Picks it up. It shows you how much he loves her. Yeah. But not just that. I mean, we get to meet Roy's sister, who, by the way, I think we talked about this a long time ago, but I was right. She was the ER nurse or the ER doctor, excuse me, from the episode where Sharon got hit on her bike. Yeah. So Roy's sister has met Ted, and that's the sister.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, they tied that in. I saw that on Twitter. People were like, "Oh the theories were correct and true." So I thought that was really cool. Back to the Uncle's Day party, though. Phoebe invites Jamie Tart to it because, as she calls him, "Oh, I thought he was your best friend because you're always talking about him."
And she sees him all the time because they've been training together.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. Oh, go ahead. I think I talked over you that last thing.
I was just saying, from her perspective, it makes sense, right? She sees him all the time. They're always training together. They're always talking together. So, of course, she assumes they're best friends. They, of course, shoot that down. No, we're not best friends. But he got Roy this really sweet present that we sort of think Kent is going to hate. And he said he changed the last name from Kent and he switched the E and the U, which was a perfect joke. And Roy loves it. He actually, his own way, sort of says thank you to Jamie. And then Jamie goes and, of course, goes off and plays in his international game later on. But yeah, I thought that whole scene was so sweet between him and Phoebe, who we haven't seen a whole lot of this season.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it continues. What about the friendship thing? They both say no, but I think they are. Jamie says, "Oh, who's your best friend?" "Oh, Isaac." And he's like, "No, it's not. Come on." So I think they both aren't ready to admit it, but yeah, their friendship is very meaningful to one another.
Yes, one. And then speaking of friendship too, I mentioned Jamie, right? He goes off to play for England. Yes. They're all watching the match, of course. And Sam is sitting in the locker room with everybody else. And Jamie finally gets subbed in. He hasn't played the entire game. He gets subbed in. He takes off, his yellow jersey on the top, and his number is revealed, and he's wearing number 24.
Mm-hmm.
And paying homage to Sam, of course. The announcers recognize that. And again, this is all during Rebecca's speech montage. Nate's playing violin. It's a very emotional moment about how meaningful the game of soccer is. It can break you or it can build you up. And we see that moment. And Sam is just, any heartbreak that he had about not making the team is gone, because he's like, I don't need to make the national team. I have my team right here. These are my brothers. This is my family. He puts up the picture of the 1994 team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's okay with it, just kind of moving on. So that sort of ties up that storyline.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, Keely and the PR firm.
Yes. So we learned that the VC that's funding her PR firm has decided to pull all funding, and she didn't get the email. So she's learning about it from Barbara, who, is the last person you want to get this kind of news from, I think. But she was supposed to get it. Jack was supposed to call her, but Jack, of course, is in Argentina still. And we see a little text message from Jack saying it's all messed up. There's nothing I could do.
She's been ghosting Keely, though.
Yeah, she has.
So ghosting her for a month or two, or she said.
And so we learned that it's closing up shop. Everyone's leaving, packing up all their stuff. We see Keely just very shocked and taken aback by it, and it came as a surprise. And it's just, we follow her, I guess, in the day after or the day of when that happens. She walks around town. She ends up at May's pub and has a great conversation with May, who might be short for maybe.
I love that crossover. I love them talking together.
And I thought it was really cool that they had that interaction. Then she was telling her about what happens at the top of the mountain. What's left for you? Just the lightning. And she's like, is that a good or a bad thing? And he's like, well, it depends if you're ready for it or not.
Yes, so good. So good. Also very representative. We've heard the word lightning a lot throughout this. Mm-hmm. From Roy, from the psychic with Rebecca.
Yeah.
So is this referencing that? I don't know. But we kind of have a feeling that maybe it's referencing Roy a little bit. Maybe, but we don't know.
Yeah. And so she goes through there, and I thought it was hilarious that May says, I'm going to get you some food, because the last thing I need is another skinny girl passed out in my bar. It tears down my Yelp ratings.
That's so her, though. That's so like in character.
Mm-hmm. And as it goes along, we see her, finally come to terms with it. And she finally reaches back out to Rebecca, who she wasn't. Oh, wait. Okay.
What about the snow globes?
Snow globes, yes. So she buys a snow globe for Barbara as like a thank you gift for helping her throughout the KJPR journey. And of course, Barbara, in all of her CFO wisdom, says, it doesn't count unless I buy it myself.
And then she's like, how much was it? And it was actually a little more expensive than she thought.
She's like, well, you paid a lot for this.
Yeah, she's like, oh, you paid way too much for this. But it's such a sweet moment, because you can just tell when Keely gives it to her, like no one's done that for her.
Mm-hmm.
And find out like she only buys those things when it's time to go. And we had sort of said this is a little odd, right? This is ominous.
Yeah.
Right? We talked about we didn't trust Jack. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a little more sinister going on. Obviously there was. And very clearly Jack probably has something to do with the VC pulling out the funding.
Of course.
And again, now we find out why Barbara was so skeptical of her dating Keeley. And it happened before. She's seen this before. So, but by Keeley giving her that snow globe, you just really see it touched her in a very significant way. You know, it's the first really stayed long enough to make a friend or someone that she cares about.
True. And so we learned that, of course, it's ending. And after the Super League luncheon, fast forwarding a little bit, Keeley and Rebecca finally reconnect. And Keeley tells Rebecca everything that's going on with the funding, with the firm. It's closing down. And of course, they have a nice exchange of like, I want to help you. No, I can't take your money, back and forth. And I thought that was really cool because, you know, it's very hard to ask for money to begin with, and then to ask it from probably one of your best friends. Yeah. And you don't want to take it. It's one of those things where you don't want to mix business with friendship because, you know, that could go sideways very fast. But I guess so Keeley writes down the amount in the paper and she shows it to her and she's like, oh, yeah, no problem. I have that in cash right here in my pocket.
Because at first you're like, uh-oh, Rebecca's face, like she can't afford it, right? Mm-hmm. We forget how rich Rebecca really is. But you're right. Yeah. Like, that's what I have in cash. I got you, girly. So KJPR lives on. Right.
And that went back to what I thought might be a good spinoff show for Ted Lasso would be KJPR. And I thought that idea had ended when the VC funding was over. I was like, oh, I was wrong. It's gone. They can't do that anymore. But then it got resurrected at the end by Rebecca. So there's still a chance.
Yes. And then we have such a sweet ending with, you know, Keeley goes back into the office and we see Barbara there and we think they're going to say goodbye. But Barbara surprises us and she's wearing this sweatsuit.
Juicy.
She's wearing this Juicy Couture sweatsuit that says Juicy on the butt. And of course, Keeley used to dress. We've seen Keeley wear an outfit just like that. And she goes, I love your outfit. And she goes, thank you. I love an outfit that tells the truth. Very out of character for Barbara, but also very funny. And Barbara gives back the snow globe. And what's going on here? She goes, I can't keep this. I can only keep it if I'm leaving.
Right.
And find out she has chosen to quit working with Jack and stay and work with Keeley. And it's just this sweet resolution where they're all going to make it work. And you know, it's a perfect ending in that sense, right? She's kind of rid of Jack and the VC that was holding them back. And Barbara gets to stay with someone who she now has a friendship with.
Yeah. And of course she asks for, she wants to get reimbursed. For the snow globe.
Such a CFO.
Right.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the Keeley story in this episode isn't over yet, though. Oh, there's also another moment, a storyline that she has with Roy. And Roy, we see, of course, during the England match, he's sitting off to the side and trying to write a note. You see him writing a note to Keeley, and he goes and tries to sneak it under her door, but it won't fit. So he gets mad. He turns around and we see Keeley startles him, and he ends up handing her the note. We see her take the note. I thought this was hilarious because she's looking at it. We think she's reading it, but she's looking at it and she gives it back. I can't read your handwriting. And it was just like, so we see a glimpse of the paper and it was just like, who could read that?
No one. No.
And I don't even think he could read it because he reads like the first part and then he just starts talking, maybe because he had more to say or maybe because he couldn't read his own writing. I don't know. But he tells her everything how he felt he was stuck and he didn't want to bring that into her world. That's why he pulled back. And he apologizes and he's sorry for everything that he did to hurt her. And I thought that was a really great moment, of course. And it was kind of like ending that time between them. Because at that moment, we don't realize the scene that's coming up when Rebecca comes over to the house and we see Roy walking out with Keely's robe on. So
Keely's robe on. They clearly spent the night, right? Are they getting back together? We don't know, but they're at least reconciling here. Mm-hmm. So, they're on good terms again. And we have 2 episodes left to figure out whether they're stay together or not. I think it's also important really quickly before we end here to note he was inspired to do that because he ran into Phoebe's teacher at school. And I think a lot of people were like, oh, well, they'd be perfect together. Like maybe him and the teacher will end up together. They were definitely flirting last time, which they talked about.
He mentions that, yeah.
Kind of confirm, yeah, hey, Roy, I sort of was flirting with you.
The teacher, she says, I teach kids, I don't mind cleaning up a mess.
I know. And she had me up until there. And very clearly that got some wheels turning in Roy's head. He's like, cleaning up a mess. I got to go clean up my mess. And that was me. So I think the teacher tried, props to her for trying. Just didn't quite land how she thought it would. Actually inspired him to do the opposite. Like, hey, I'm going to go make Keely. So line who was saying that Roy and the teacher would be together or should be together. I'm sorry. Does not look like that's going to happen.
The last word he said, though, when he's leaving, I thought it was hilarious because we know that Phoebe had a problem with cursing a lot in class. So they called Roy in to talk with him and they had this big conversation. But so at the end of their last interaction, instead of saying the F word, he just goes, fudge. And I thought that was just so perfect. And it harkens back to that. And I just thought it was such a wonderful way to end their connection.
I think that connection is done now. Sorry, people of Twitter who were a fan. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I was telling you this earlier before we started this podcast today. This episode it just felt very final. I really feel like we're really feeling like this is going to be the last season.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like that at first, but now it does because everyone was like, there's too many storylines going on. All the characters are too spread apart. What's happening? I don't get it. How are they going to wrap all this up in 3 episodes? I mean, boy, they just did it there. Mm-hmm. I mean, 4 storylines there that were completely wrapped up. And it just, like I said, it just feels so final. And like a conclusion is just around the corner. And so I think the next 2 episodes are going to be very Ted heavy. I think it's going to be a lot of Ted and Rebecca and decision making and Nate. And, I really, as much as it breaks my heart, this is it. We're in the stretch. We're in the final 100 here. And that last episode just felt so final. I don't know how else to say that. But it makes me sad a little bit, but it also makes me happy because I was worried about some storylines being left open or forgotten about, but they're like, nope, they remember.
That's true. I mean, you think to some of major shows that when they came to their conclusion that maybe it didn't give you the finality that you wanted, right? So it left it open and it left you wondering and well, what happened? I wanted to know. So at least the writers here are have a determined approach to draw conclusions to those storylines, not leave us wondering about it. So
yes, and that doesn't mean there won't be spinoffs. I'm not saying that, but the Ted Lasso arc,
right?
From the beginning, they've always said it's going to be 3 seasons, and gosh darn it. After last night's episode it sure as heck feels like this is the last season. So I don't say that to be sad or to change the mood here, but I just say that because that's genuinely what I felt. And that's what this podcast is about, how we feel when we're watching this, what this show makes us feel, the emotions. And I definitely feel a lot better after watching the last episode. I don't know. I feel a lot better about the show ending. I was worried, but now I'm not. I'm worried about the end with Ted, but that's another story. We got to wait for that.
They're going to leave that. Maybe they'll leave that open-ended and it'll be like one of the, you would hate that, huh?
I'm not for Inception type ending here. Like
exactly.
This is what happened. Oh.
It's up to the viewer to determine, did Ted go through that door to Rebecca or did he go backward?
Please, Jason, if you ever watch this, not that you're ever going to, but please don't do that. Please. I know the show's already shot, but if you did in that way, like, go back and reshoot it. I don't know. Okay, that's it. That's it from me for this. I don't have anything else to say. I'm just like, mic drop. That's it.
There you go. Bye, everyone.
Bye.